Hello, this is Lisa Hazard and Misty Lore with We're All Psychic. And tonight we have a special guest. We have Donna. Donna, would you like to say hello?
Yes, hi everybody.
Everybody, that is Donna. And Donna, we would like to know if you think we're all psychic.
I absolutely do.
You do.
I really feel that everybody has some level of psychic connection. So which to me means some connecting to something bigger than ourselves that we're still a part of, but that we can tap into if we're willing to go there and we're willing to be receptive.
Right. That makes perfect sense to me. How about you, Misty?
Yeah, definitely. I love the way she put that.
I think Misty's already looking at her tarot cards because.
How did you know?
I know because that's the topic.
Just because you're psychic. Is that
maybe?
Why?
No, because I saw you looking down and not answering. Oh yeah. Teasing you. Right before the podcast, we were talking about our cards, listeners. So we all had to. So Donna, tell us about yourself. Tell us how you got started with all of this stuff in tarot.
So I actually I realized it took a little while, but I realized when I was quite young, without knowing until later, and realizing that it didn't necessarily happen to everybody, that I was a precognitive dreamer.
Oh,
so I would dream and then stuff would the same thing that happened in the dream. And this is like, when I say young, I mean like really young, like maybe 5-6 years old.
Wow.
So
were they like big premonitions or like little things that just happened, like the bucket is right where it was in my dream and stuff like that?
One was a pretty big one. And then some of the other ones were just smaller stuff.
Yeah.
What was the big one? Tell us what the big one was.
I want to know too.
I want to know the big one.
Okay, so the really big one, I was actually, well, because when you're born, if you're Catholic, you get baptized when you're an infant. So you're basically born Catholic.
I was born Catholic, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know this is going to sound kind of weird, but when the Pope passed, which I believe that was John the 23rd, I had a dream of a Pope, and I knew kind of like what the Pope looked like. I mean, I don't know in my dream that I immediately identified him as the Pope.
Yeah.
But he was like in the full, like the regalia, right?
Yeah.
Like the robe and the, but it was in the dream, and it was just really like a brief flash. Plus my memory now that's a long time gone. But it was someone in that church regalia, but instead of the person, like his face or his body, he was a skeleton.
Oh, and did you tell who did you tell?
I told my parents. My mother was very sensitive psychically.
Yeah.
She didn't explore it really deeply. And my parents were not terribly I mean, they were Catholic, but like they weren't
like
terribly
most Catholics.
Orthodox. Yeah. and I want to say this to their credit, although there wasn't a lot of emphasis on it, either positive or negative. I guess her initial reaction was, wow, okay, that's really interesting. And, how do you feel? Were you scared? Whatever. But then, I don't remember the time frame, but not long after that.
Whoa. Wait,
what did your mom say?
Yeah.
And she was,
yeah. What did she say about that?
She was just like, because it was everywhere, because he was a really, I mean, he was a big deal. And I'm trying to remember if it was him or if it was the one that was just prior to him. Again, I was a little girl. I'd have to actually check. But it was when the passing of the Pope led to a new Pope.
Okay.
So, again, she was, I mean, I remember like her and my father, because I don't know, it was on it was on the cover of Time magazine or Life magazine or whatever, And so this whole, talk about going back, right? But I know there was kind of this whole thing of like, the way they, again, the way they would like look at each other.
Uh-huh.
And do you remember? And it's like, yeah, I remember that, that happening. I remember her telling us about that. So to their credit, they didn't make, and it was probably a good thing, they didn't make a big deal about it, negative or positive.
Yeah. That's
Good. They acknowledged it though.
But they acknowledged it. And so I give them, again, especially the generation that they were, the generation that I am and the generation that they were, it could have gone in a really different direction.
Yeah,
you're right.
And I'm very fortunate that
that's great.
they were more enlightened.
Yeah.
And didn't make, especially I want to say a negative issue of it.
Yeah, like don't talk about that or
right. That's taboo
terrible.
or that's something is like evil or wrong. It was never handled that way. And again, I attribute most of that. My dad was an artist, but my mom, so I think he had a different kind of sensitivity.
Of course.
But then with my mother having all of her experiences, I really do feel that she understood. And so she wasn't frightened by it and didn't want to make me frightened of it.
That's so cool.
So that was a big one.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Yeah.
It's probably the biggest one at the youngest age. Now, over the course of my life, I've had plenty of precognitive dreams. And I guess, too, I just always had a real interest. I was very drawn. I'm not even sure when tarot showed up on my radar exactly, but I was really drawn to the idea of the cards.
Right.
And I got my first deck when I was 14.
Do you remember what it was?
It was the Aquarian Tarot.
Nice.
Ooh.
It was a nice tarot deck.
Yeah, that is nice.
I was not and never have been, and this is no disrespect meant to anybody anywhere, but I never was really heavily Rider-Waite.
Yeah.
I did some learning. I did some of my learning on the Rider-Waite, but that was never my go-to deck.
Yeah. I think
everybody's got different ones. Yeah.
I think you had said you really like the Thoth deck when we were.
Yeah, and I actually did most of my learning, study, and practice has been with the Thoth deck.
And we had talked about this in our emails too, how deep into astrology and the cards are. If you know your astrology, you will read these cards well. If you know cards, you will learn astrology.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been a whole secondary education. And so the other thing, I guess, that I'm probably really surprised about is that, so going back to that first deck at 14, that would mean that this year for me is my 50th year in my relationship with the tarot. So this is my, what is that, my golden anniversary of the tarot?
The diamond. Or 75. I think that's
or diamond, whatever one the 50 was. Like if you were married, when you're married.
Wow. You've got to be very experienced.
You must be.
So we're talking a lot of years. And some years were less than others. I mean, I was a young girl. I would pick up my study, I would read, I would and then I would do other things, and then I'd pick it up again. It was never far. It was never far.
Yeah. That's really, really awesome that you got to get started so early, because so few people, I mean, especially around where we live in Alabama growing up, Misty and I are around 45, 43. She's 43, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And, we grew up in a small town. She grew up in a smaller town in Alabama.
Yeah.
So that stuff just wasn't around, I mean, if somebody had a tarot deck, like, ooh, that thing's so cool. Where'd you get that? We didn't have Amazon.
Yeah.
Bookstores didn't have tarot cards.
Oh, man, but I wish I would have at 14.
Oh, gosh,
I so wish I would have.
I mean, I was a Chicagoan, born and raised, but, but the area I grew up in was not a particularly, hip area. I was in just a regular neighborhood, We weren't downtown. We weren't in any of the more if you want to say the more bohemian or the hardy areas. But still, it's still there because there's such a big population. There's such a diversity of neighborhoods and, all of that. So, and then with my age, that time, even though I was quite young, we're talking about the 60s, right? So the whole research astrology, in tarot, in different esoteric practices, magic, just the whole environment was a lot more open about stuff like that. So the access really was there, even though I wasn't right in the midst.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That's a really cool time to be learning.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. It was a fun time to grow up. It was a rough time to grow up in some ways. But well, because I wasn't old enough to really participate, but I wasn't so young that I didn't know what was going on.
Right.
So I was sort of right in this, like during my teens then, a lot of stuff happened.
Yeah. So like, especially with tarot, since that's what the podcast is about, you had told me that, and we agreed on this through the emails, like it's the best self-discovery tool that I have found personally. And you said you found that to be a very great, that's what you're like, that's what you wanted to talk about, how we can help ourselves with the tarot. It's not necessarily about divination. So
absolutely. There's so many ways to go deep into a card or the cards that are not tied to a prediction, or divining, I would say in that sense.
Yeah.
Pardon me, that they're really rich. They're rich in visual symbolism. Even if you don't go deeply beyond the visual, there are a lot of things that, because they're so visually powerful, that all kinds of things can come up and all kinds of connections can come up if you're willing to just sit with a card.
Yeah.
And let it.
That's a great meditation right there. Yeah. And think. Go ahead and let yourself think, because meditating, you want to think because you're not allowed to.
And there's like so many different pieces to the card.
Right.
And so many different meanings to every little piece on that card.
Yeah. Everything that you see. Yeah.
Crazy.
Everything that you see visually, the way the artist has rendered it, the different symbols, the numbers, right? Because the cards are numbered.
The grass, the mountains. Right. I mean, the environment.
Right. The nature, the people. What are the people doing? What's the environment doing? Is it dark? Is it light? Is it, rich and lush and, say, like high summer, right? Where everything's green and growing, or does it look desolate and bleak like winter? I mean, there's so many different ways or cues to pick up to get an energy, to get a feeling of the energy. And then that just gives you a lot of places to go.
Yeah, it really does. So how did you first start using tarot for yourself to understand yourself? Was there anything going on in your life where you were just like, tarot, just explain this to me, or were you just kind of slowly did it all your life?
I was just really fascinated with the idea that I won't lie, the idea of being able to see or predict upcoming events certainly had a strong appeal.
Me too.
And
that curiosity is always there. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. But the other thing was just the idea that there was a system, right? Because there's an order to tarot.
There is an order, especially with numerology and astrology and
there's a reason. There's a reason. Yeah, there's a reason for the suits. There's a reason for, there's kind of a reason for everything for the way it's structured.
Yeah,
the numbers. Yeah.
And I didn't know initially. I learned as I went along.
Me too. I learned as I went along. Yeah.
I'm still learning.
And I still am. The connection with, for example, Kabbalah, right?
Yeah.
One of my earliest teachers, as a matter of fact, and she did teach me with the Rider-Waite deck, was able to start explaining to me sort of the Kabbalistic references or connections.
Right.
So that opened up a whole other dimension of structure, right? Of the structure and order of the universe.
Yeah.
So all of that, like I say, has been an ongoing, unending fascination.
Yeah.
And the idea that it correlates to so many different things.
It really does.
Again, other systems that that harmonize with it or complement it, and then its own kind of, I'll use the word, perfect system or perfect.
It really seems like it. It tells the story of life. I mean,
yeah.
It's the journey we all make from when we start out, when we're born. We're the fool, right? We're sort of, we're open and we're new and we're on the beginning part of our journey all the way
the
through.
World.
Yeah, all the way through,
owning the world. Right?
Yeah, where
Or
we
leaving
are in for the universe.
Yeah. So this funny thing, as kind of like a little off topic, but the world card, I always like have mixed feelings with that card. Just speaking to fellow tarot readers, like what's your go-to with the world? What do you think of first? Because for me, a lot of times I have like a little catchphrase or something that I cling to first. I have a few of them, and that one or two might pop out. The world card is a mysterious one for me because sometimes it makes me sad.
Me too.
When I see it. Yeah, it makes me a little sad. And if you listeners, if you don't know tarot, they're the main trumps or the major arcana, the big cards, they call them. They tell us the big things, the themes are going on in our lives. And the last card is the world, and it's 21, right? 22, 22, 21, 21. Okay. And it's just like a really interesting card because it's beautiful, but it just reminds me of like, it makes me a little sad. And almost every deck when I see the world, I don't know why.
That is interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. I guess for me, depending on, again, especially if it's not in the context of a particular reading.
Yeah.
The idea that something has reached its full manifestation.
Yeah.
It's kind of gone.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Kind of gone as far as it can.
Yeah.
It's kind of gone as far as it can go. It's fully materialized. It's fully realized.
That's great.
Yeah.
You've just helped me a lot in that with just the explaining it that way.
I like that.
Oh, great. Okay. And that, and then that for me, there is, I want to say I could maybe understand why there might be a little bit of melancholy around that.
Yeah.
Because the idea that once something comes to that point, since nothing stands still, right? Nothing's static. Then at that point, it's going to diminish, or it's going to change, or it's going to die.
Yeah.
But of course, then that's the rebirth, right? Then that's the rebirth.
It's a cycle. Also. Yeah.
But it does end a cycle.
It does.
Yeah.
In many
that's
ways.
how I think of it, as like the cycle of it all.
Yeah. That's a description of the manifestation completed completely and at fullest. I think that's a really good way to put it because we have had a manifestation podcast and talked about that before, and I think we all, as we learn about manifestation, realize how we've done it in our lives, like for good or worse.
Right.
Yeah, once you realize how powerful your thoughts really are, and your words, and how much impact, and how much impact that really does have on your reality. I mean, for me, it's taught me a lot. It's taught me how to check certain things. Or I don't want to say resist, but get a different understanding because of what you can generate by the way you give energy to a thought or a word or whatever it might be, or a symbol on a card.
Yeah. I know. I've always been a fan of yods. On the cards, those little yods on the.
Yeah, I love them, and I love it. Yeah, and I love that yod. Is the hand because.
Oh, is it? I didn't know.
Yeah, yod is actually really cool.
Okay.
Yeah, a yod is a hand. So the idea of everything that we create physically, right? With our hands.
Yeah.
What they're able to do. That's our way, or one of our ways of actually acting in the world, right?
That's just great. So when you see a yod, it's like an action. You're taking action in the cards if you see them. Because I've always just thought they were neat little things, and I like the word, and I just noticed them a lot. They stand out to me. I don't know why, and the laurels do too. Those are another symbol that are in a lot of the tarot decks. So you were going to talk to us about like doing a card of the day for people. Like, so what would you like to explain to the audience about that? Like how it can help them?
I think one of the ways that the card of the day can be really helpful is by starting out with an approach of, again, probably less about prediction, although you never know, right? Something that you may,
right.
I mean, assuming, say, you start in the morning for that day. That few minutes that you spend just drawing a card at random, which I still think is probably the best way because I feel that you'll pull what you need to pull.
I do too.
But the other alternative way would also work, and that would be to just kind of spread the cards all out. And if your eyes are drawn to one or your hand is kind of moving toward one, that's fine too. I guess the main thing would be not to overthink.
Yes.
How you make your choice. Because then you're stuck in this whole thing of what's the best card for me to pull today. And if you start overthinking at that point, it's going to get hard to get into what you're doing. So either completely random, by not looking at the card face, or if you're looking at the face of the cards, just to really go with where your intuition or your instinct leads.
Right.
And then really to just kind of quietly and without a lot of busyness about what's right, what's wrong, am I going to get a really deep, profound message? Am I not going to get a message at all?
Or is it going to be bad?
Right.
They're it's like, oh no, I pulled the tower for the day. I better go to my bed.
That's not good.
That's not good.
No.
But again, not to make, not to kind of judge ahead of time or not to try to jump ahead, but just to kind of pull a card and let the impressions come, right? Just sort of really use your eyes, use your, I'll say use your mind as a secondary thing, because it's probably not the appropriate moment for like analyzing.
Right.
And to just let like something in the symbol, the colors, the number, if it's a major card, that number will have some significance. If it's one of the minors, that too will have some significance along with the suit. So if you know the suits, basically, the air, earth, water, fire, again, what does that bring up? The energy of those elements, fire's hot,
That's about
water,
energy. Yeah.
Water's cool and wet, air could be very turbulent or it could be very gentle, right? Just sort of feeling. Earth, you feel really grounded, you're on something solid. I really try to let everything just come in unfiltered.
Yeah. And that's really interesting, because I do too. But then I think a lot of people, especially when they first pull a card, that if they're in worst case scenario mode, it's mindset, that card's gonna look like a horrible card. People
somebody is like, and then right, and then to make that connection of saying, "Oh my God, that means today is going to be a terrible day."
Yeah, that's not that's where
you can always turn it around.
Well, because you're like, wait a minute, I'm looking at the Seven of Swords and just assuming everybody's going to lie to me today. You know?
Yeah,
right.
Let's think about this, really, and then we can talk about we can look at ourselves and say, why was that the first thing I thought of? Oh, like the worst case scenario,
I guess that's the thing too. And I guess that's the thing too. I mean, for me, in my practice, the way I taught myself to look at it was, again, not to make a prediction about what my day was going to be like based on the card, but just to notice what the card was showing me, telling me, how I felt, what I was thinking about, without drawing a conclusion. I guess that's the thing.
Like that. Did you write it? Would you write it down and look at it at the end of the day or anything?
Yeah, I usually take a couple of notes, or I'd remember the number and see if that came up during the day. Well, other than obviously it's going to come up twice a day on the clock, right? We're between 1 and 24. But and another thing that happens to me, because I'm clairaudient, is that a lot of times then the next thing I know, a card will trigger like a song lyric or a title. And so then that's a whole other thing. And then it's like, did I hear that song on the radio in the car driving to work or driving home?
Wow.
Or did I get an earworm that played in my head all day?
Literal, like a little earworm. That sings. Let's see. I can't think of a funny song right now. It's just blanked. It's like I know all the songs in the world, and I can't think of a single one right now.
Of a lyric right now. I know.
Right this moment, there's no songs that exist.
Right. You'll hear of one tomorrow.
Oh, it'll be in there, and I'll be like, "Oh, the haunted earworm is here. It's from Donna. Donna sent this earworm with my Queen of Cups."
Yep. Yep.
Oh, and then with the court, and then if you get a court card again, I mean, so that's a whole. Then that's kind of a whole other kind of impression, right? Because they are people. They're aspects of ourselves.
That is something I really had to figure out, like really work on. Like people
court cards are
character. People are
really hard.
Yeah.
Court cards are hardest thing as I was learning. Hardest thing to really get a handle on.
Yeah, and they're really archetypes, but they're not like our society's archetypes. They're from kind of a few centuries ago, based on that kind of archetype of people a few centuries ago. So they're kings and queens, and in a lot of decks and princesses, and
But the personalities have stayed pretty. They've actually stayed pretty consistent over time.
Yeah,
both good and bad traits, because we all have those, right? We have what's more positive, what's maybe not so positive, or things that are positive, but unless they're taken to an extreme, then they can become problematic. But so even though like the physical, again, the physical in a lot of decks doesn't reflect a lot of diversity, and they're definitely, at least my deck and many still are just, they're binary. But the personalities, if you get away from the idea of gender or race and look at the personality, that's actually pretty consistent over, I would say, human experience. Human personality.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like some of the I wish they had, I think they do this in the Thoth deck. They have a princess and a prince, they have so that's something I really like about that deck. And so I actually have made my own tarot deck. I'm working on the guidebook right now, and it's taking
wow.
I made the tarot deck in 2 weeks, and I can't finish this guidebook. And I'm a writer. I used to work as a ghostwriter professionally and stuff. I can't write. I know it. I know what I want to say, but it's just I don't know what it is. It is like I just want to have it, And
I started work on a deck also.
Yeah.
Awesome. And because I'm not an artist, or at least I'm not an artist of the caliber that I think I would need to have somebody actually want to look at the card.
Yeah.
I use digital art. I can't draw a crooked line straight.
And I actually got hooked up with somebody who was able to do at least some prototypes for me as a starting point.
So cool.
And he was very reasonable to work with. And I think, again, as an artist, even though I don't think he's necessarily esoterically schooled, I think he's very sensitive, very in tune.
Yeah.
And he actually did some really nice prototypes with me, for me. And I think I'm going to continue to work with him.
You have to send me some pictures. I would love to see.
No, don't let Lisa fool you. She's got an artist living with her.
My husband's a tattoo artist. He's an artist. I mean, he paints and draws, and he's also a tattoo artist. He's not.
Wow, well, that's amazing. But he's not working at.
He's a tattoo artist professionally to make money, but so he's not working during COVID because it's just, during the coronavirus, because it's just too blood and plasma.
Yeah, how do you, and you can't distance. I mean, even if you're masked or whatever, you can't distance.
No, you can't. So yeah. He hasn't.
But he could be working on your deck with you.
Well, I already finished it. I've done the artwork, but it's the book. He wants to make a tarot deck, though. He does. He's actually
your next one.
Yeah, because he's actually done a few cards just for fun. Like he did a Yoda as the magician, and it just was like amazing. I love that card. I love that. I'll send that to you because you'll like that one a lot. If you like Star Wars, and I love you.
Absolutely, I'm big Yoda fan here.
I think he made an Emperor too, of course, being the Emperor. So I'll see if he finished that one and send that to you too. You like that one? So yeah, doing this, guys, listeners, if you do get into tarot, you can definitely help yourself. Like every time you pull a card, it gives you a different perspective. And there's nothing wrong with another perspective, unless you're like gonna take it the wrong way. And most of the time, if you take the cards the wrong way, as though they're insulting you or saying something bad's going to happen, probably is your point of view. And as you go into the tarot, it'll explain why you have that point of view. why you feel like an inner critic, why you feel judged, why you're judging yourself. And the tarot can explain that to you as you go through it and read for yourself a card a day.
That absolutely. That's such a great point, Lisa. You make a great point. And again, the idea of expanding or possibly changing your perspective, or at least allowing for a different way to look at something, is really, I think, a lot of times why the card of the day, again, aside from how's my day going to be, can be an idea to look for your experiences or look at your experiences and interactions throughout the course of that day. And again, see how your own perspective influences those. Does your thought or feeling about a certain situation or a certain person change as a result of just thinking about it a little bit differently or looking for something different in it. I think it's really helpful. And again, to get away from the idea of a prediction of the card of the day means today is going to suck.
No.
Okay. That's the end of that.
I'm going back to bed.
But you know what? It's also about, if you're just starting out with readings, it's good to do one a day. Just you can concentrate on that card and that meaning all day to learn it. So there's all different kind of things you can do with just one card a day.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And that's a great point too, Misty. The idea that just by familiarizing yourself, right, by really allowing yourself to look at it and sit with it, and again, let it kind of talk to you. Yeah, I mean that's a it's a real great learning tool.
Now, I think you said you teach, Donna, you teach tarot classes, right? Or
I have taught tarot classes. I've actually taught, the basics. And then I've actually been fortunate enough to have one-on-one instruction with some students who were a bit more advanced.
Oh, that's great.
They had already studied, they were already reading.
Yeah.
And they wanted to look something beyond the basics. That's fun. That's really exciting. It's all exciting. Wherever somebody comes in, whatever order they come through, it's always fun to work with somebody and encourage them. And I think maybe the biggest thing is just encouraging that sense of trust in one's own intuition.
Yeah.
And one's own
very good point.
Ability to
trust it.
Explore the universe and then kind of trust what's coming through.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Lisa did for me. That's exactly what Lisa did for me. Like was a tarot card class that she was doing, so she did all of that for me and more. So that's really cool.
That's wonderful.
I met Misty about a year ago. Right now, we've only known each other about a year. When I started working at a local shop, which I'm not working at during COVID because I can't do in-person readings, and because my room's very small. It's not too small, but it's just there's no ventilation. I'm not doing it.
And again, close quarters.
It's really different. Yeah, you just don't know.
Yeah,
and I love just, and my best friend April is a reader now. Like she's I talk about her on the pod. We'll get her on here eventually. She's
one day
on Everclear now. But she's a Reiki master, but she's also learned the tarot on her own, and she's always used to bother me. It didn't bother me. She'd say, "I'm going to bother you for a reading. Would you mind reading? Read. I love doing yes. That's where I learned a lot of like new decks, new kinds, because I got to practice with April, and then she learned them, and so that's like the only person I know I can sit down with and just like sit there and talk about the Five of Wands. Just for a good 10 minutes, who do you do that with, right? It's fun. I bet I could do it with you, Donna. Misty too. We've sat and talked. There's some, there's a lot of depth and a lot of concepts in each and every card that you can find an example of probably in your room at any given time, the room you're in. Just like,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
and it's always nice to see people discover, I always say kind of beyond the book meaning, right?
Yeah,
I do know people that have learned to read completely intuitively. I have tremendous respect for that. I always say if you're not using your intuition, then you're kind of missing
the whole point of it, right?
The full experience.
Yeah.
I've got kind of a hard question for you. I don't know how to answer this myself, but it just popped into my head. For the listeners, how would you describe knowing you're using your intuition? How do you know when you're using your intuition? A lot of people are confused about that. Like, I want to use my intuition. They'll say to me, I want to use my intuition more. I want to be more aware of what my intuition's telling me. But like, do you have like any like key phrases or anything like that would maybe tell someone when they can feel like, for me, it just feels, I call it juju. And it's like my juju sense is on, I don't know how else to say it. It's like, I just feel it, but I don't know how to explain it other than that.
Yeah, it is hard to explain. That is a tough question, but I'll give it a whirl. I guess for me, I know when my intuition is operating, whether it's a thought, a feeling, a sense, it's not so much the form that's really important, but the fact that it kind of comes, even if it's just a small sliver, it's still kind of whole unto itself. And it's not the product of linear thought.
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
As you're thinking about something, right? Like you're thinking about, okay, I have to get in the car and drive to work. I'm just going to use that as an example.
Yeah.
So, I have to leave at, 7:30 and I have to make sure that I'm on the road. And, there's a whole, like kind of a linear thing going on in your mind about what's happening or what's coming up.
Right.
So that to me is not intuitive.
Okay.
I don't want to say it's not thinking, because very often it presents as an actual thought.
Yeah.
You got to turn that off. Is basically what you're saying.
The linear thinking, right? The thing that has to follow a certain step, a certain logical order.
Yeah, logical order.
Yeah. You got to turn that off.
Yeah, because that's kind of in the way. That at least, I mean, not when you're actually driving to work. It's probably good to do it.
Right. But when you're working with Taro, when you're working with Taro.
But when you're doing a reading or you're looking at your cards, then it's a whole other thing. And at that point, linear thought really is sort of noise. It kind of gets in the way.
That makes sense. That's a perfect way to put it. I like that. Is they feel like you're out of time. I feel like the biggest thing that I've seen people that hold people back with the tarot when they first start is just being overwhelmed by everything about it, not knowing and not like, what is that picture? What's that guy doing with all those swords? Why is that woman crying in bed with all those swords? What's going on?
It is a lot. It is a lot.
The Ten of Swords, jeez, Ten of Swords is a pretty brutal card. Listeners,
yeah, I mean, your initial impression when you look at that is, even if you don't know exactly what's going on, it's like,
somebody got in trouble. This is not a good situation. You have 10 swords sticking out of your back, but somehow it's the end of a cycle and a beginning again. And it's a beautiful thing how it wraps all around like that. So,
and I think the other thing too is, so I talked a little bit about, intuition. And so the idea of reading intuitively, because without the intuitive part, it's really not the whole experience.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, the scholarly part, in other words, learning the basics, right? Learning why the cards are what they are, right? Why there's a major arcanum, why there's a minor, what they need, how that all fits together. If you're just a scholar and at some point you don't depart from I'll call it the accepted interpretation or meaning of the cards, or why they look the way they do, or why they're ordered the way they do, well, then you're a scholar, but you're not necessarily a reader.
Right.
So at some point, that learning piece of learning kind of the nuts and bolts piece, and then the intuitive piece.
Right.
They mesh together at some point, and that's when things start to really happen. And they can happen simultaneously. It's not like one, cancels out the other. But I feel like you can't really have one without the other and have a full experience.
Okay,
yeah. I agree.
Yeah, I agree too. Yeah.
Well, I've got, I've told Lisa this, and I might have said this on the podcast, but I've printed out like little printables that you can
she does. She stuck them on her cards. Yeah. Right.
And cool. That really helped me learn a lot faster because I had the intuition to do it. Like I was good at it. I felt it was right, but it was so much to learn. And so when I started pulling out keywords and kind of putting them on the cards, so when I did my drawings, I was like, bam, bam, bam. And I'm learning through that as well. So I highly, highly recommend that, for starting out,
And that's kind of a meditative practice with the card itself.
It is.
Touching it and putting the words where you think they would be. And,
I'm putting my energy in it. Yeah.
Everything that keeps that creates and and maintains that sense of connectedness. And that's a great tip, Misty. That's a really good idea. Because again, that sense that it builds your confidence, that you have that thing that after a while, you don't necessarily need to have the cue anymore. But while it's there to cue you, it sparks something. And then you're like, oh yeah, okay. And then like you said, your intuition is working. Those keywords or those key phrases are triggering, for you, both sides of your brain. That's a wonderful, wonderful learning experience or teaching.
It is. And you can start right away. Like you don't have to wait, or stop and look up something, or you know what I mean. It's like bam, bam, bam.
And in our world, we can download an app on our phone. And that's one way I also started learning traditional tarot. Because I started with the Osho Zen and I did that, but I just read it intuitively. I didn't go by the book. As someone gave me that deck, it's the word. I'm a word person. I had words on it. It's like, I like that. I can think about that word more than the picture because that's kind of how I'm not very visual. I'm not very. I got good ears and that's and so that's how that. And I can read and I can get a lot out of just a word like completion. Speaking of the world, but just that word would stand out. All the words on that tarot deck would stand out to me, and it's kind of like how the Thoth deck works too. It has a lot of the cards have words on them that really help kind of drive home if you need them. And so when I started with the traditional was the Rider-Waite, that's the one I chose to start with to learn. And but I was using a deck based on it. It was a Mystical Cats tarot, and I love cats. So, and then from there, I was just collecting them, and then I've learned about Lenormand. I think that's how you pronounce it. I've been trying to learn about some of those. Those are fun. Those are really fun to play with. Yeah,
they are.
The Tarot de Marseille. It's very similar to the Rider-Waite, but the Thoth is a little different. It's kind of got that astrology aspect to it and bringing everything together.
It's definitely different, and it's a hard deck. It actually is a hard deck to learn on because, in terms of the images, there are people that are court cards, and there are people sort of in the majors, but none of the minors have any people in them.
It's
and we're we're human people, and we look for those cues, right? And you're not there. It's very it's very geometric. From another aspect, it can still bring up a lot, right? By what's there visually, but it's hard not to have those reference points. And again, I've worked with both, studied from both. But the idea that with the Rider-Waite, you have things that look familiar, right? You have scenes, you have people, you have people doing things,
doing strange things.
So it's like, okay, that's that makes sense, right?
It does make sense that they'd be doing strange things. Everybody's always doing strange things. That's why we read tarot. We know about those strange things.
But it's not that odd. It's a little more, I would say, antiquated, right? People aren't necessarily doing what we now do.
Yeah.
But if you see a farmer in a field, you're like, okay, I get that, right? I understand somebody's growing something in their garden, or
and
celebrating something because they're dancing around,
Yeah, then you
Those
get the
things
father,
that
the Tarot de Marseille, and they just have like the coins, or just
Yeah.
just you have to count, and if they don't have a number, you have to real fast count,
Yeah.
or your card, Yeah. But my husband just got me a deck called the Movie Tarot, and it's based on the Rider-Waite. But what I found interesting there was that it was more like the Tarot de Marseille or the Thoth deck in the suits in the 1 through 10. So but what I found with this deck, it was really well done. It's kind of like how the Thoth deck is done, because I know the meanings already. I've been doing it long enough to know them very well. I can see a 3 of Swords and know like a picture of the other one, or I just have an association of what it means. But in that deck, that Movie Tarot, I don't know, something about the way they did it. It's like the swords are up the right way. The wands face the right way when they're inverted and when they're upright. It just gives me a feeling of putting your guard up or letting it down on the pictures of how they did that deck, and I thought that was really interesting. But it's not a picture. It's not a scene. Out. Yeah, it's not. I mean, the rest of the deck's just a trip. It's really fun. It's got like the Godfather as the Emperor, and stuff like that.
Love that. What a
it's a great deck. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, yeah.
I have to find that one.
Neo from The Matrix is the Page of Coins. Who doesn't like some Matrix? Don't tell me you don't.
I do.
Thank you. I do too. Well, so what advice would you have to anyone who's listening and they're you probably talked them into getting a tarot deck? What's the advice to start off with for them?
First of all, be really easy with yourself. Relax. There will not be, there will not be a test on this material kind of thing. Get familiar in whatever way feels good to you. Handle your cards, play with your cards, and I mean play.
Yeah.
The idea that for a lot of us, myself included, because, I went there, it's like, oh, where's the book? Oh, there's the deck. Okay, here's my first, I'm going to lay out a spread, and I'm going to, it was like, okay, time to take a chill pill here.
Yeah.
And of course, because I was totally lost.
And some of those guidebooks are written very extremely dramatically. Some of the guidebooks.
Oh, yeah.
The word treachery, debauchery. Yeah. It's like, it's like these big, like, damn words,
Yeah. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And that doesn't, I don't know, that there some decks really do have that super high drama to them when you read about them in the, and to me, sometimes it is like a big drama, but sometimes, most of the time for me, it doesn't really feel too much like that. Not anymore. When I was younger, I think every young person in their 20s, teens, they kind of
got a lot of drama. Yeah, got a lot of drama.
Yeah. But I think,
or at least what we think of at that age as being a really big deal, right? Really dramatic.
Yeah, exactly. It feels that way. It's the first time it's happened,
Yeah, right. never had that experience before. So the idea of just getting, again, not worrying too much about starting to memorize or, any of those things. There's a reason for the structure. I'm not going to say it's not important. It's not necessarily important as the very first thing, unless you happen to be a person who absolutely, wants and needs that.
Methodical needs a structure, yeah.
Yeah, and really needs a methodical approach. I would say at some point, though, if you start with just that, even if you're a really methodical person who likes structure, you're either going to get lost or you're going to get bored, because again, that's not their primary reason for being. So the idea of taking some time to just handle them and play with them and look at them and familiarize yourself in terms of overall impression, or use a card of the day. And then you can start to kind of jump back and forth. I mean, you can look at the book. Maybe you've been looking at the Two of Cups and you're thinking, I know how that feels, right?
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I was just about to say that, because like one of the things I did with the tarot card, not that same thing, but with the tarot cards, I tried to think of like, I would take like a card like, I don't know, the Eight of Swords, which is like you can't see out of your own way. Basically, you're kind of like your own worst enemy in that card for me. And so like to to take that picture of this woman,
self-restriction or self-limitation. You're not seeing past.
With she's all tied up, and she's not really. She can run away. Her feet aren't bound, and she's blindfolded with all these swords on a riverbank, or by the ocean. And it's like, I try to think of some place in my life that might have felt like that. And it'd be like when I was married to my first husband, I was totally that, and put
that's
it
a good thing. Yeah.
I wasn't being honest with myself about what was going on, stuff like that. And so that's one thing I also do with the cards, or I did when I was first learning them. What was the example of like being really like sick, or like with a five of pentacles or something, being really down and out and just having a hard time. And I think back, one time I was eating tuna and oranges for a few weeks, and stuff like that. I think back. And brought me tuna and oranges, and it like making an association like that that's more like practical in my life makes it not seem so huge and daunting in a way,
right,
to take on these mysterious cards. So where can people find you, Donna? Or would you like anyone to? Like, do you have you're on Everclear, right? Everclear is our sponsor, and I do want to thank them for being our sponsor for the podcast. And Donna's on Everclear as an advisor.
Yes, on Everclear. On Everclear, I'm Maria M.
Maria M. Okay, and we'll get your number if you want. We can put it in the description.
Yeah, I'll get you my direct. I don't have it memorized. I'll get you my direct phone number.
Do you have a website?
Yeah, I'll get you my direct phone number.
Okay.
I do have a website. This is always such a mouthful, but bear with me. So it's dstnytarot.com. So it's like the word destiny, up the E, drop the I. And that's me. That's Donna.
I'll put that in the description.
And I do a weekly tarot cast, which is sort of a general, it's a card I pull at random. It's kind of the general energy for that week. It does tie into current astrology though also.
Cool.
So, and that's, so the astrological aspect of the card is, it's always going to be whatever it is.
Yeah.
Love it.
So if the card is the zodiacal trump of Gemini, it always is the astrological trump of Gemini. But then that week's astrology, right? What's happening in that week's astrology actually changes with whatever's going on with the planets.
Yeah. That's really cool. I'm going to watch that.
Awesome.
Yes, I'm going to check it out. Do you write it or do you do a video?
I write it. I really need to. No, yeah, I know. I'm a writer too, but I'll tell you, I know I need to start doing, I think, a video and a written version, because I know a lot of people really, really want to see that video and hear.
Yeah, a lot of people they do like videos and they like watching stuff. Yeah, I'm more of a reader and a listener.
Me too.
Like that.
Me too. It's right now it's still in written form. At some point, I hope soon it'll be a written and then also a video.
This is great. Oh, I can't wait. Yeah, I'll put that in the description.
That'd be cool.
And Missy, you have any last questions for Donna?
Oh, I have something I need to say. I need to get it off my chest. This has happened to me the last 2 times I've brought up tarot cards. And both people said, I believe in God. That's witchy stuff. Well, let me tell you this right now. Make it really clear. I bring positive energy. I bring God. I bring my angels all into everything I do with my tarot cards. So how can that be evil and not tied to God? I don't get it. But anyway, I want people out there to know that these aren't bad cards. It's all about what you bring to them and what you get out of it. And that's what I got to say.
That's a big stigma, and that's a big stigma in our area for a long time. That
the idea that this is
you make the devil's thing come true when you tell those words with the cards. That's what they say. I had a Catholic tell me that. I ran sound at a church, and this a friend would sometimes help me and sit with me and talk to me and stuff. And it was first thing I started with was palmistry, and he had injured his hand, and he was using one of those putty. Like playing with the putty to the strength buck after he broke his hand. And I played with it. I was like, oh, this is really good for palmistry, because you can see those little, the palmar lines. And he's like, did you know that anytime you read palms, everything you say, the devil makes come true? And I said, I quit. I did. I quit that day because that was just too much for me. I mean, that was because I thought this guy was like a good friend, and there he was just like telling like, where did that come from? That fear.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want any of it. No, nothing to do with it.
Yeah, there's a lot, unfortunately, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. There's a lot of prejudice still, and this association, I think, with tarot and something either evil or witchcraft or,
yes,
which is not evil, but I'm just saying in people's minds,
people
there's
have
this
a bad
Yeah.
association with it, but it's the people who make things happen, not the cards.
Right.
It's the bad
Ultimately,
people.
Yes.
It's not
ultimately, I think you can be of God and connected with God in a positive way and still do what we all do, and that those two things do not they're not in conflict with each other.
I don't either.
It's intention. It's how we connect with other people. It's how we connect with the world around us. And if that comes from a place of light and love and godliness, then to me, there's no way that can be an evil process.
Yeah.
And it brings me closer to God.
Yeah. And if we're so far, I mean, if we are supposed to be from this divine creator, then if we divinely create cards, why can't we use them? You made us and we made them,
Right.
So it doesn't make any sense. The literal sense, but I think it's just a fear-mongering thing for some people to keep control over people who would look at a Seven of Swords and be terrified. They want to keep that control possibly, but that's another podcast, and I feel like that would be a fun one. I don't know if it's for tonight. Donna, thank you so much for coming and being a guest. I'd love to have you back to talk like deep tarot sometime. That would be really fun.
Thank you. I would thank you. I would love that. It's been a pleasure to talk with both of you and to get a chance to talk to your listeners and introduce myself and hopefully inspire them to start on their tarot journey if they're not and if they're already on it, to help them move down the path.
Move on down.
So it's been a complete pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thanks for having me.
And Misty, as always, thank you. And listeners, thank you so much. We appreciate you more than you know.
Thank you, listeners.
And have a great evening. Bye.
Goodbye.